Hey, everybody. Jackie from Copenhagen here with Joe.
I'm here from Dallas, Texas. Hello.
Hello. And today, with our small talk, we are gonna talk about a small, quirk I kind of stumbled upon recently with DLL files being cached by Windows. So the issue was I had a program that uses a DLL file for storing image resources. You can find the functionality on the forum and stuff like that. But the thing was, when I then updated all of my files on users' systems, Windows, or actually the program, just kept using the old resources, and I didn't understand why. And of course, some research meant that I found out that Windows was caching these DLL files. And to begin with, I couldn't actually figure out what that meant or why it was doing it or how to get around it. Because, of course, it made sense that Windows wanted to kind of tone down how much reading and writing was happening when your program ran. So a little bit more research turned out that the more you use a program, the more Windows will try to kind of learn what you're doing.
Optimize, yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. So even by closing my program and rerunning it, that didn't stop Windows from caching the DLL file. So I was kind of like, what do I do? I had my users actually shut off the computer, everything. And what I ended up finding out that worked was having them move all of those files to a new place and then running it. And of course, that meant that Windows was seeing it as a new thing, and that worked. But the thing was that actually, was Windows just caching these files and for some reason not seeing that I had actually updated the files. So even the files being newer, the program being newer, everything having been closed, Windows having been restarted, Windows would still go to the same place and look if it had cached a file for the program. And I couldn't figure out how to really get around it until I don't know if it took me long or whatever it did, but at least I found some kind of inkling of an idea of what it might be. And some users on Stack Overflow, perhaps, that sounds about right to myself.
Yep.
They said that, oh, Windows has this service that runs that you need to shut off. Just shut it down, and it will auto run again, and then it will update these things, and that didn't work. It didn't work. And then reading more into that, because now I had kind of the right terminology, right, from what was really going on with these DEL files being cached by Windows. And Windows actually keeps, maybe it's a folder, might be a good way of saying it, a folder where it keeps track of these files that it's caching. So at least that was how I came to see it. And a lot of these people were talking about this from Visual Studio issues when they built their project and then they ran it again and did some small stuff and ran it again. And at some point, Windows would come out and say, the Dell file or the resources not where it's supposed to be. And that's of course because they'd added more to the Dell files in their project. And it was very clear to them what the issue was. But to me, it wasn't as clear because it was just like an image file that wasn't totally updated. So other functionality just didn't work as well as I wanted it to. But the resource was there. It has just been updated. So what I ended up finding out was that if you don't version your Dell files, so if you don't go into your Dells and give them a version number, then Windows will just keep seeing them as the same version. So that was the real gist of it. So even if you have found the correct service, turn it off, rerun it, and all of these different things that I tried. I tried deleting this folder that they talked about where all of this was stored, and still it didn't work. And I didn't really want to delete entries on my users' systems. So deleting all of the cached stuff with all of the it just didn't seem right. I wanted something that was a bit better, and it actually turned out that I just needed to update the version in the Dell. And I had used, what was it? I think it was not Sean, but Scan, perhaps, functionality of building these Dells. And of course, he hadn't built in version information. So the Dell files I were using didn't have any version information. So of course, Windows just saw them, all of them, as the same one. So why use newer one as they were the same version to Windows? And as soon as I put in versioning, I used Resource Hacker to actually go in and put in the versioning. Should I see if I can find something that might make sense? I'll take this one. I'm just fiddling around here. So let me see. Here, there, and there. Yeah, Joe?
I was going to say, because first off, you don't have to start right away, but just walking through how you even figured it out, right? Because that seems like something that, like, good Lord, that's hard to troubleshoot and nail down. Wow, right? That must have been a pain.
It took me quite a lot of time to actually figure out what the issue was. But of course, I have a program that I sell and have quite a few users, and I might update it maybe once a month or something, or twice, or it depends on whatever, if I have new ideas or what it might be. And when the software that is automated, when that changes, and that happens from time to time as well, I of course need to update some of the resources that my program uses to find its way. And not everything that I'm doing can be done programmatically. So image search and stuff is used. And to me, the problem was that they would load up my program. It would seemingly work until that one button or text or whatever it might be that had been changed because the company had made a new build, and just the rendering had changed the pixels of the text enough to warrant an update to the resources. And these users would of course come to me and say, something here is not working, and the ending point being that me asking them to restart to do this, have you updated, do you have them telling me what version they had, and them sending me the files for me to look them through, and they were the correct files. I could see that they were correct, but still it was failing at the point of where one of the resources had been updated. So it's like, there is something there. That's the only thing I've changed. That's the actual pixel information, right? And them moving all of the files into a new folder, solving the issue. To me, was like, what's that about? And that was what kind of led me into thinking that the DLL, the old version, is still being used. That came from them having that error. And then the moving of the files to a new location and putting those two informations together into thinking that somewhere the old resources is being used, being cached, and then using perhaps that word with DLL, and then a Google search ended up giving me a clue into what it might be, and then just keeping at it, trying the few solutions that I found. And then someone saying that he had just updated the version because there was a lot of solutions and a lot of ways that people told you to fix it. And you could get this program and you could do that, and you could go make sure you do like build your project in this way and make sure you have your dependency, or like, oh, I don't know if I can use that. And then at some point someone said, you need to make sure that your DLL file has a new version number. And then I went into my DLL file to look for what version it had. And then I figured out that, oh, it doesn't have any version information. And as soon as I gave it that, the issue went away.
That's awesome. Yeah. The other thing which you mentioned twice, but I just want to make sure people realize it, it's so critical, is you paid close attention when because you didn't necessarily know exactly what you were looking for, but after doing a little bit of snooping, you got much closer to the terms you should be searching for, right?
Yeah.
And that obviously that's a critical step in the process, but it's one of those things you can't, unfortunately, it's not like AutoHotkey. You can't search for the things you think it might be, right? Mm-hmm. You gotta figure out what it actually is, and then make sure you drill into that.
Often I start with almost a sentence of how I'd explain it to someone. Because of course, when people search, they often, but Google themselves recommend you search for sentences because it gives them much more to search for. And by doing that, and of course, looking on more than the first page before changing my search term, might also help. That's one of the things I see myself doing more and more, is just looking at those 10 results and then thinking, I'll just search for something else. But I know from experience that my own web pages are often on page 3, and I want people to find my web pages. So if I don't go to page 3 myself, I think that helps sometimes, because when I don't know if getting a bit off, but if I search for anything that resembles hotel or travel or vacation, I'll get the exact same 3 companies all the time.
Yeah.
Filling the entire first page.
Yeah.
I'll never get to anybody who specializes in summer houses in Spain or something.
Yeah, you're bringing up, you want to do a long tail keyword search instead of the short term. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
I get you.
So yeah. And that led me with some reading, quite a bit of reading and quite a bit of trial and error, led me to a solution that worked. And to me, it was quite simple. I just needed to version my file.
Right.
It made a lot of sense, but I'd never thought that a DEL file was versioned. I had just not thought about it.
Well, and even if it was, you didn't think something would be using that information, right, and checking for a newer version, but lo and behold, it does.
Yeah, and again, it's a functionality of Windows, right? And I think I read somewhere it started maybe in 7 at some point, where they got the idea of it might be in XP, I can't remember, but at some point they started doing this Big Brother thing of following which programs you use the most, and the more you use a program, the more of it will cache, and that makes a lot of sense. But with someone like me having no formal education in programming, it was just totally unknown information. Because just searching for it is still now with the right wording. I still need to traverse a bit of Google's results before having one that actually says how to stop Windows from caching a DLL file after I close the exit. So that's the 5th result on my screen with my search term, right? And before that, it's all DEL files keeps being used, or cache DLL. So there's actually a DLL that's called cache, or Windows file protection and DLL cache. Again, that's a semantic, so that's antivirus. So again, with a search term that actually works to finding my result, I'm still getting all kinds of results. So it's not something that's clear cut.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point too. Is that's part of it is just learning how to do more sophisticated, Boolean searches, learning how to exclude things, right?
Yeah.
Or where I have key required words and use some double quotes in there to help tie things together. But yeah, that's
that's one of the things I think I don't know if newer Googlers, if that's a word, actually have learned about I'm calling them the old tricks, but the minus sign to actually exclude words, or as you said, the double quotes to say that this word absolutely needs to be there, and a few others. I can't remember all of them, but there are
using ORs, using using the file type if you're looking for a certain type of file, right? I use that a lot when I'm looking for PDF or something. It's just ways to help restrict it. And hey, if you don't know, just when you get to the Google search, hit the advanced button, and then it'll help you fill it out.
And I've recently used reverse image search, where we'll actually search for images or similar images. So,
cool. Yeah.
That also is a nice feature. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for walking us through that, because it's one of those things that I would never have thought of. And I like hearing also that, even because you're much more advanced than I am in programming, that even for people, even if you're not a programmer, you're still, way up there compared to me. And you run into stuff that you just go, you're scratching your head, and it probably took you a while to trouble, of your time, right, to figure this out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it did.
So
I was happy I figured it out, but yeah.
Yeah, I bet. But for people that are new, it's a sign of don't give up, because even when you know what you're doing, right, some things are tougher than others, right? They take time.
Yeah, this one to me was one of those where we talk about the internet having so much information, and so much new information is put in. This one, I wasn't sure I would be able to find the information, but it was there. Someone had the issue before me, even though it's one that's so hard to actually search out.
Yeah.
And still there was multiple answers, and there were even people who had made blog posts about how to fix it. And to me, it's just, in a few years or something like that, it's really, really gonna be hard to find something that someone else hasn't already solved.
Right.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about it, and I forget what it's called, but remember when I was trying to help search for the other approach for the mini something for the
Mini touch, yeah.
Mini touch, and that one right now we've struck out because no one has adapted it yet to an example that we can borrow from. But we're just going to be patient, right? And like instead of spending a lot of time and money, which we could do and solve it ourselves, we'll let someone else solve it and just give it a little bit of time because we're not in a burning desire for it. But we're going to look forward to that. It's another solution rather than using ADB. Is that what it was that you're using? For the
the Android data bridge.
But again, that was and even we were searching and even finding, again, it was getting the right vernacular, the right terms, and finding a person that could actually at least interact and point us in the right direction to tell us if because it was hard to try to track down.
It was.
But and actually that was what, like 3 months ago easily, right? Maybe longer. Maybe we should go look again because
right, and I'm not faulting Google or anything, but I think that it's good having one point of where people look, but I feel myself getting more set in expecting Google to get me the result on one of the first pages. Whereas back in the day with Alta Vista and Netscape and Netcrawler and what they were all called, all of those different browsers or search engines, and you just knew that you needed to really bring your A game to find what you were looking for. Whereas now you simply expect Google to give it to you quite quickly. It's
actually it's kind of, I guess it's not scary as long as technology never leaves us, because we used to have to train our brains how to do stuff, right? And now it's getting to where we can be lazy and have the computer figure it out for us.
Do you remember, I think it was last time, or maybe it was a few times we talked, where I don't know if it is not any, I'm using the word epiphany, but that's not correct. But the realization of that if some kind of thing happens to humanity where we lose, like, say, the ability to, or the knowledge of generating electricity or something like that. In 100 years, if we go the way that we're going now, the books on your shelf behind you will probably, less of those will exist. It's
absolutely
like that. And just generally, all of these things that you don't need anything to access, no device, those are slowly moving away, and companies, data, surveys, drawings, blueprints, everything, people's information, banking records, all of that stuff is already digitalized today. And if for some reason we forget how to access digital data, whoa.
Or let's say there's some EMP that wipes out the planet, all the and somehow magically prevents other things from actually starting up. I mean, what the hell would happen, right? I mean, the world would fall apart as far as we know.
Where we are right now, people learn to read. People can use a book. They can still use an old dial phone. Some people can even Morse code and even lower entry points than that. But if you put on a few more generations, then people won't take up that skill anymore, because everybody that had it died off and nobody needed to learn it. So you will maybe have very, 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 very small part of people who have it as a hobby or an
Right.
interest or
Yeah.
some kind of librarian somewhere or a PhD
Yeah.
student.
Yeah. How many people speak Latin today? Right. It's
Yeah.
yeah.
And again, that's the thing, right? Where we might have lost a lot of things, but I recently, okay, we're going off on.
I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's wrap it up. Yeah. Finish your thought, but let's wrap it up.
Yeah, I recently visited a museum in Denmark where we viewed houses from the year 1000 up to the year 1900 or something like that, and just seeing how people lived within a 1,000-year time span, going from house to house. These are real houses that's been moved from the landscape to the museum and is in the countryside, right?
Yeah.
And just seeing that first you had like fireplace where you could hang a pot over it.
Yeah.
And then it extended up to being like you had bricks around it so you could heat the bricks. And then at some point it became a built-in similarly oven type thing. And then it became an actual stone stove where you would have the fire below with air intakes, all of that stuff. And then that for 400 years it was built in stone and just became more and more. And then metal. All of a sudden, you had the thing that actually distributed the heat in the living room was a cast iron thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, the kitchen appliance actually became a cast iron thing that you would still put wood in and have open fire to actually heat stuff. But you're just seeing how it went over the years building up like that. But for those 400 years in the middle, maybe the Middle Ages or the Dark Ages or whatever, it just stood still for 400 years where it didn't advance at all. It's just, to me, it's like, and it was the same with a lot of things. So yeah, technology is kind of fragile when it comes to.
It can be, yeah. Awesome, man. Well, thanks again for walking through that other stuff. That was really, to me, it was really interesting, and hopefully it never happened. That actually issue never happens to me, but it might solve it. But it's more about the general approach, right, of troubleshooting and how to search for it and keep at it. Don't necessarily wait on just the first page. Keep reading, keep searching. Mm-hmm. Find some people that know what they're talking about and ask them, right? I mean, if there's experts.
A good idea, because that would have been my next go-to thing, right? I would probably have made my own post on Stack Overflow or AutoHotkey or asked in an online chat somewhere. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, that was fun.
Yeah.
We'll see you next week.
Yeah. Bye.